Hi everyone, how you going? Hope you're having a great day wherever you are in the world. Um, Today's one is part three of today's video lives about choices and anxiety. I'm going to be putting the other first two parts in here shortly after this video is complete. In the link below, I've also put the link for the group coaching session, which is free tonight, 7 p.m. Sydney time, wherever you may be. So set that aside if you're willing to join us, and bring your list of 100 health, wealth, relationships, and experiences you'd like to have in this lifetime, so that you can share some of the things, or I can help you shop for some of the things you'd like to put on the list, or however that session will go. In the meantime, as this is the group that absolutely loves engineering and engineering like topics like designing, architecture, and civil works maybe, or robotics like myself especially, although I do love architecture as well. There is something really sleek about it that I've always been fascinated by, which is, which has inspired me to get this particular book, because I absolutely love architecture and the way that you can like really design things with aesthetics and brightness and shadows and light, and make everything function just really beautifully, not just in architectural buildings, but the architecture of the robotics designs that I plan to, well, I am starting to create now. So, well, choices and anxiety, right? So, the more choices that we make, uh, the the less anxious we feel, right? The more empowering the choice, the less anxiety. Although anxiety will still be a part of it, it just won't be as overwhelming, right? Um, like I was saying about the becoming a pilot in the last one, as far as being an engineer, especially in robotics, well, we have, when we're creating something that's going to be mass produced for the market, we are really being vulnerable, okay? And especially when it's your project, your idea, your concept, and you're putting it all together. And the ones that have come before me that have done similar things as to what I'd like to do later, not necessarily my first projects, but the ones I'd like to do later, they've all been killed off or silenced or discredited. So there's a bit of an extra sense of anxiety when I put myself into a robotics or engineering project, because I know that when I get it to a particular position, I'm going to have to really, I'm going to have to be open to all feedback across all types, right? I'm completely fine with that, but I also have done my own trials and tests over the years to work out what the public's ready for and when it's not ready for. And the designs that I made 25 years ago were not nearly ready for, the public was nearly ready for that back then, but are slowly becoming ready for it now. And so, as I'm putting these particular projects together now, I have to be aware of trademarks, I have to be aware of patent law, I also have to be aware that once I put myself in those positions, that um, there can be some legal contingencies I have to be aware of, and therefore I have to make sure that my lawyer team is kick-ass. I can't be hiring legal representatives in the higher level commercial sense that are people pleasers, that quite frankly won't be able to exist at that high level, because they need to be able to tell me what I need to get done in order to solve whatever that problem is. Okay, and I'm going to need to make sure that, again, accountants at that particular level that know how to help me in the corporate structure of protecting patents and trademarks as they come up, that's all set in place correctly as well, so that internationally I'll be set. So when I get to the particular point in time of mass producing my projects, right? And because of the nature of the projects that I have designed, it's a matter of when, not if. Then I need to be building that momentum in such a way that it's just simply one choice after the other, after the other, after the other, so that I can get my products approved the way that they need to be done, and adjust them to meet the regulations that may or may not come up, and therefore then meet the next level of criteria once it gets large enough to be able to go IPO and kind of expand from there. And for all this, I've been studying Elon Musk and Richard Branson very closely. Okay? Those are the two particular entrepreneurs that most resonate with some of the things I plan to do. Okay? And the reason I say Elon Musk is quite obvious. Okay? But the reason I say Richard Branson is because he's dyslexic. Okay? And he had all these extra insecurities that were blocking his path in many different ways over time. Okay? And it's very interesting with Richard Branson because he's dyslexic. He is not very good with like creating correct grammar and and putting that out there. But he started off his entrepreneurial career writing a magazine, right? He started his own magazine, okay? And that magazine was full of articles about musicians and like music labels, that sort of thing, until he was able to raise enough capital to create his own music label. All right, Virgin Records, and so he still had the magazine going, and he had Virgin Records going, and he was getting all the success, even though he wasn't able to do much of the final edit stuff. He knew that he could put an article together and hire someone else to do the nitty gritty part, right? He overcome his anxieties, he overcome his disabilities, and saw them as the upgrade that they are, because like I'll go into that in another time, but not just that, but delegated the part that was most challenging to him once he got some success rolling, right? And delegated it to a friend of himself, I think, a friend of his and stuff, to help do the editing process. So he was letting himself be very aware of his shortcomings, right? And choosing to understand them rather than say, oh, I've got this shortcoming, I can't do it. He goes, I've got this shortcoming, who could I ask to help me? All right? Much more empowering position. And this paid off many, many, many times across his life experiences so far. You know, so much so that he was gathering success in Virgin Records as well as his magazine, and so everyone in the UK pretty much knew who he was after a few years. And he happened to be catching a taxi this one particular day, and the taxi driver recognized him straight away as who he was, Richard Branson, the owner of Virgin Records and the Virgin Music magazine, or I think what it was called. Can't remember what it was called. But the point is and stuff, the taxi driver recognized him, okay? And he got all excited, and the taxi driver started saying, look, please, I know you're a very busy person. I know you're so successful and you're doing so many great things, but I'm also not just a taxi driver, but I'm also a musician. Can you come into my home and meet my mum and listen to one of my demos, please? And Richard Branson was going to blow him off and that sort of stuff. And the taxi driver was just so nice and so friendly and so insistent that he goes, you know what, let's do it. He made a call, and he arranged a call to be made, and and stuff when he got to the taxi driver's home. So he used their home phone, made the call to say, I'm going to be late to my next appointment. I have to make a quick stop. And let himself sit down with this taxi driver and his mum while the taxi driver played his demo. The taxi driver was Phil Collins. Phil Collins was that taxi driver, and if Phil Collins didn't choose to overcome his own anxiety and turn that into excitement, didn't let that opportunity slip by his hands, slip through his fingers, then he could have let one of the best music decisions out of his entire career slip by, and we wouldn't have heard of Phil Collins' amazing music or his band Genesis when he created that later on. But it gets even more interesting than that. Alright? So you'd think that was great enough, but no. So Richard Branson, later years, about 10, 15 years later or so, he's out on holiday with his family, okay? And there was a storm warning passed out or something like that that prevented the mainline airlines getting to this island to get people off the island, right? And he doesn't like settling for being told that something can't happen in a particular way. He usually is very action based like myself. He'll go, how can I solve this? And because it's just an island airport that they're all waiting in, getting the bad news that the mainline airline can't get in. Can't remember the brand, that's not important. Anyway, so he's looking around and he can actually see the other private planes in the hangars across the way of the landing strip, and he goes and grabs a piece of paper off of his wife and a pen, and jots down some numbers as to how many he reckons that could seat in those planes, and he finds one of the pilots of one of these other planes and asks them how much those planes seat, right? And he worked it out, it was like 8 or 12 capacity for some of them, and there was like 100 people stuck at this airport. And he goes, if you could help me, he does some numbers and some calculations as to, after asking a couple of questions of the pilot as to how much it would cost to fly a particular distance, that sort of stuff, in fuel and time and those sorts of things, and how much the pilot costs per hour. And he went back and did some more numbers, just really quickly, just easy sums, and worked out that if he organised these pilots to get them off the island before the storm hit, because it was mostly a timing issue or something like that as to why the planes hadn't come in, because the storm was at the other end of where they were coming from or something like that. Did the numbers and arranged all the pilots, and he basically came to the conclusion that he could make a profit off of everyone there and make everyone happy and get everyone home to where they wanted to go. So like 4 or 5 pilots and planes later, and he made himself and his wife and his kids be the last ones to be flown out, and he's made profits on his own holiday. Anyway, so the idea that he was able to do that so easily stayed with him, so much so that when he got home, he started getting some consultants, getting some professionals and stuff to work out the numbers with him and stuff as to what it would take to build his own airline. Okay? Now, he was going really well in this process, and he was just about to launch the Virgin airline when the banks who were funding his property investments and other things found out that he was going to do an airline, and they threatened him that they were going to take away all mortgage funding away from his investments, millions and millions of dollars, that they were going to take away from Richard Branson's investments if he didn't stop with creating Virgin Airlines. Okay? And they were going to pull all the funding. Like, they gave him this news on a Friday afternoon, because this type of people always give bad news on a Friday afternoon, right? because they think it's less confrontational, giving him till Monday to cease and desist on his plans. Anyway, so he's absolutely heartbroken, sitting on the steps of his house on Saturday, and out of the blue, he hadn't heard from Phil Collins for quite a while, but Phil Collins calls him to catch up, see how he's going. And even though he wouldn't usually reveal the fact that he is a bit down in the dumps, he told Phil Collins that, look, I'm feeling pretty shit here basically at the moment. This is what's happening, and I don't know what to do. I've just put a year into creating this airline, and they're going to pull the plug on me. And I need to raise such and such an amount. It's like $15 million or something like that. Or I won't be able to continue with it on Monday. And Phil Collins is listening to him and saying, look, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. And so they get off the phone and stuff about half hour later after chatting and catching up on some other things. And the next morning, he gets another call from Phil Collins on a Sunday morning saying, Richard, it's all going to be okay. All right? I've pulled together myself and our other music friends, right? We're going to fund you. Our lawyers are going to be in contact with you tomorrow morning and with your lawyers. We're going to draft up agreements so that we take place of all your bank's mortgages, wherever they are, and we'll go from there and we'll help you fund your airline. Okay? That's the power of making great choices over time, giving the best of yourself, going in particular directions, and you'll find the people that resonate with you best over time that will support you. And you're never going to know where they're going to come from as to how they're going to help in the future. All you need to know is you keep pulling that rope forward and you can create some great stuff. Now, keeping in mind, the reason this really relates to engineering as well is because Richard Branson's also gone on to create his own aerospace company, okay, which is Virgin Galactic. And if you remember, he was the first person that is just a corporate to go into space. You know? That wasn't a NASA employee. Okay? Think about that. That's amazing. Elon Musk is next. Jeff Bezos. You know? These guys engineer their future. They engineer their future past all their shortcomings, all their ailments and stuff. They accept them as part of themselves and they realize, I need to choose to overcome this. So everything that they engineer is, how can I? Right? And it goes with and it should be a skill that translates with our relationships and our health. How can I how could I become this and have great health, have a great relationship along the way? Okay? Richard Branson is also one of the very, very few people that are an entrepreneur, absolute billionaire, has been in space, and still is married to his wife of how many years now? You know, he has a very loving, caring relationship. You know, he has his own private island. You know, he has engineered the life experiences that he wants to see in his lifetime. And he's doing fucking great about it. You know? So, I know I kind of took a little bit more of a pilot detour for this one stuff, but it's also very relevant to engineering. You know? And our love of engineering. Because everything Virgin does is engineered to say his legacy. Every company he's made is engineered to let you know who built it. You know, who created it, who started the process, and that legacy will move forward. You know, like Elon Musk has created the Tesla company, he's created the Boring company, and he's done SpaceX. Okay, and a couple of other things along the way. You know, but they engineer their future. They don't just accept it. They overcome their obstacles. They overcome their shortfalls and shortcomings, right? And they go, how can I? How can I create this? Just like sometimes you, as an engineer, you might have a client that wants to build a particular type of building or skyscraper, and they're wanting to bring the cost down, and you have to have those difficult conversations to say with them, well, actually, no, if you bring the cost down and reduce the quality of the decisions you're putting into this particular project, then your skyscraper, or your building will fall. Will fail. Okay, and so we need to engineer the solutions into our future, because you don't want to be sitting on the 50th floor feeling the whole building shake. Okay, there's just so many different ways in which creating empowering choices can help us overcome our anxieties, right? And if we're empowering ourselves over our anxieties, then our anxieties will no longer have control over ourselves. We can have control over what we would like to do in our life, and anxieties can simply be there as the warning system that they're intended to be. They're to let us know that there's a snake in the grass, you know. But unfortunately, with human nature, we can turn on the snake in the grass feature of anxiety with just a thought. We don't need to see the snake in the grass to feel like there's a snake in the grass. And these are the things where we need to make more empowering choices in order to overcome the anxieties and therefore make a more fulfilling life. Anyway, I hope you're having a great day. Again, 7 p.m. Sydney time tonight is the group coaching session. It is free to attend. The link will be in the description below, and I will put the other two components of today's video in the group shortly. Okay? And I'll see you tomorrow or next in a couple of days. Bye-bye. If you're getting value out of this, please do hashtag value. If you watch the live, please do hashtag live. And if you watch the replay, please do hashtag replay. Thank you.